Right then, welcome back to Study Hall, everyone. We're diving deep today into something, well, you probably use every day.
Yeah.
Facebook and TikTok.
Oh, yeah.
We've got their terms of service right here.
Right.
And some analysis of them. And
Always good to have a bit of analysis.
it's
Yeah.
things get a bit interesting.
It's easy to just click agree and move on, isn't it? But yeah, these terms are essentially contracts, really, about how they can use our data, what rights we have, and what risks we might be taking. Yeah.
Exactly. So let's have a little look, shall we?
Sure.
What are these platforms actually offering us?
Okay. Well, Facebook's mission is all about connecting people, building communities, sharing experiences. They want to be your virtual town square, essentially. And TikTok. Well, TikTok is all about creative expression, primarily through short, engaging videos.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one's the digital equivalent of the local pub,
Yeah.
and the other's more like the stage at the village fair.
Yeah.
But both of them need data to function.
They do.
And it's not just a little bit of data, is it?
Yeah, no.
It's like they want to know our inside leg measurement.
It's quite remarkable how much they gather. Facebook, being the older platform, I suppose, casts a wider net. You know, they're interested in our relationships, interests, work history, education. They're building a detailed profile of who we are, both online and offline. TikTok, on the other hand, focuses more on what we do within the app itself. So what we watch, who we follow, how we interact with the content.
So Facebook's building like a comprehensive dossier.
Yeah.
Whilst TikTok's more interested in our digital footprints.
Exactly.
Within their specific ecosystem.
Yeah.
But both are using this data to tailor our experience, right?
Yes.
Facebook's news feed, TikTok's For You page, it's all curated.
It is.
Based on algorithms.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating, this. How do these algorithms work?
Well, they try to predict what will keep us engaged, which on the surface sounds great, sounds helpful, but this can lead to echo chambers or filter bubbles where we're only exposed to information that reinforces our existing views.
It's like only ever reading one newspaper, isn't it?
It is.
You just get the same viewpoint all the time.
Exactly.
Now, this is where things get a bit more complicated. Advertising.
Yes.
Facebook is quite upfront, aren't they?
Yeah.
About using our data to target us with ads.
Mm-hmm.
But TikTok's terms are a bit more ambiguous.
A little bit.
About data sharing with third parties.
Absolutely. That ambiguity is a real concern, especially given TikTok's Chinese ownership. There have been allegations of data being sent to China, which raises serious questions about user privacy and data security. It's a stark contrast to Facebook, where at least we know what we're signing up for, even if it's not ideal.
Yeah, and speaking of signing up for things,
Mm-hmm.
both platforms assert quite broad rights.
They do.
Over the content we create, don't they? So if your dance video goes viral on TikTok,
Yeah.
or your witty Facebook post gets shared 1,000 times, who really owns that content?
Good question.
It's almost like sharing a pint at the pub, only to find out you've unwittingly signed away your right to brew your own beer.
That's a brilliant analogy. It really highlights the potential imbalance of power between the platforms and the users. I think it's worth considering whether the convenience of using these platforms is worth potentially relinquishing control over our creative output.
Absolutely. And then there's the issue of account suspension
Oh, yeah.
and termination.
Yeah.
Both platforms can shut down your account
They can.
for violating their community standards.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a real lack of user control
There is.
or recourse in these situations.
It's true. They hold a lot of power, and their terms make it clear that their decisions are usually final. Imagine being banned from your favorite pub with no explanation and no way to appeal. It highlights the importance of understanding the rules of the game before you start playing, so to speak.
It's like being told to leave without knowing why
Exactly.
and having no chance to explain yourself. It's a bit unsettling, isn't it?
It is.
And it makes you wonder about the bigger picture,
Yeah.
especially with those national security concerns surrounding TikTok and its potential links to the Chinese government.
Yes. The lack of transparency surrounding TikTok's data handling, coupled with China's history of internet censorship and surveillance, has fueled these concerns.
And Facebook's not entirely off the hook either, are they? I mean, they've faced a lot of scrutiny for their role in the spread of misinformation and their influence on elections. It's like these platforms have become the new battleground for everything from political debate to cat videos.
It's a complex situation, and it raises important questions about who gets to control the information we see and how that shapes our understanding of the world.
Exactly. So before we get too lost in the weeds, let's step back and think about what we as users can actually do about all of this.
Okay, well, the first step is awareness. Being aware of the terms of service, understanding the implications of data collection, and actively managing our privacy settings are crucial.
It's like reading the fine print before you sign a contract, isn't it?
Exactly.
It might be tedious, but it could save you a lot of trouble down the line.
Yeah.
We also need to diversify our information sources, being mindful of those potential echo chambers we talked about earlier.
Absolutely. We can't just rely on these platforms to curate our worldview. We need to be proactive about seeking out diverse perspectives and engaging in critical thinking.
Right. We need to be active participants in shaping our own understanding of the world, not just passive consumers of whatever pops up on our screens. So we've covered quite a bit of ground here. The differing missions of Facebook and TikTok, the sheer volume of data they collect, those powerful algorithms, the advertising models, content ownership, account suspension, and the national security concerns.
It's a lot to take in, but it's essential knowledge for anyone who uses these platforms. What's particularly fascinating to me is this contrast between Facebook's relative transparency about data collection for advertising and TikTok's ambiguity, especially given those potential ties to the Chinese government. It really highlights the different types of risks we face on each platform.
Absolutely. It's like with Facebook, you know the devil you're dealing with, even if it's not ideal. With TikTok, there's a level of uncertainty that adds another layer of complexity.
And this brings us to a fundamental question. What's a balance between convenience and control in the digital age?
Yeah. It's like we're trading bits of ourselves.
We are?
Our data, our privacy for connection and entertainment. Is it a fair trade? Food for thought as we move into the next part of our deep dive, where we'll explore the broader societal implications of all this.
Indeed. These platforms are more than just apps on our phones. They're woven into the very fabric of our lives, shaping how we communicate, consume information, and even how we think.
We'll be back shortly to unpack all of that. Until then, keep those thinking caps on.
Right. Welcome back to Study Hall. We're going to zoom out a bit now and consider the wider implications of all this stuff about Facebook and TikTok.
Yeah, in the first part, we were talking a lot about data collection and the algorithms they use. And it struck me that they're not just tools, they're almost like ecosystems that we live in now.
Yeah.
But what impact does that have on society as a whole, do you think?
Well, one concern is that they can actually worsen existing social divisions. You know those filter bubbles we were talking about?
Yeah.
Those algorithms can really limit our exposure to different viewpoints.
So instead of having like a robust debate down at the pub, we're all stuck in our own little corners online where everyone agrees with us.
Yeah, it's a bit like that, yeah.
I mean, that doesn't sound very healthy for a democracy, does it?
Exactly. It can lead to increased polarization, making it much harder to find common ground on important issues. And it's not just about our personal views. These algorithms also influence the news we see, which can have a huge impact on how we understand current events.
Oh, absolutely. It's like instead of having a balanced news diet, we're only being fed the information that confirms our existing biases. And we've seen how quickly false information can spread online, particularly during times of crisis or political upheaval. It's a bit scary to think about the impact that can have on elections, public health, trust in institutions.
It is a bit worrying. It's a stark reminder that we need to be much more critical consumers of information, double-checking sources, and being wary of anything that seems sensational or one-sided.
It's not enough to just passively scroll and take everything at face value anymore, is it?
No.
We've got to fact-check and think critically about what we see online. Now, let's think about the economic side of things for a minute.
Okay.
I mean, these platforms have definitely created new opportunities for content creators and businesses.
Yeah.
But they've also had a huge impact on traditional media. It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, we've seen the rise of influencers who can make a living just by posting on these platforms. It's a whole new economy.
It is.
Fascinating to see how it's evolving.
Yeah.
But how has this affected traditional media outlets like newspapers and TV?
It's been a real struggle for them, to be honest. Advertising revenue has shifted online, making it much harder for them to fund quality journalism.
I mean, that's worrying, isn't it? We're increasingly reliant on these platforms for information, but they're driven by algorithms and profit, not journalistic integrity. It's like the difference between getting your news from a trusted local paper and relying on gossip you overhear down at the market.
That's a great way to put it, yeah.
I mean, it raises a big question about the future of news, doesn't it? Who will be responsible for checking facts and ensuring accuracy in this new media landscape?
Yeah, good question.
It's a real dilemma. And it's not just news either. I mean, these platforms have a huge impact on all sorts of creative industries, don't they?
Yeah.
Musicians, artists, writers, they're all using them to reach their audiences.
Yes, but there are concerns about copyright and intellectual property. Both platforms claim quite broad usage rights over user-generated content,
Right.
which makes it difficult for creators to control how their work is used and monetized.
So that catchy song you wrote and posted on TikTok could end up being used in an advert without your permission.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Doesn't seem quite right, does it?
No. It raises important questions about the balance of power between platforms and creators. It's crucial for artists to understand the terms of service and be proactive about protecting their work.
Yeah, it's like signing away the rights to your family recipe, just
Yeah.
because you shared a slice of cake with a neighbor.
It's a bit like that, yeah.
And we can't forget about the impact on mental health and well-being, can we?
Yeah.
There's a growing concern about how addictive these platforms can be and the potential to contribute to anxiety, depression, body image issues.
Right.
I mean, it's easy to get caught up in the comparison game, isn't it?
Yeah.
Seeing everyone's perfectly curated lives online can make you feel inadequate, especially for younger users, I think. And we're all so glued to our phones these days, constantly checking for notifications and updates.
It's true. The pressure to present a perfect online persona and the fear of missing out can definitely take a toll. It's important to be mindful of screen time, make a conscious effort to disconnect.
It's like anything else, isn't it?
Yeah.
Moderation is key. We need to find that healthy balance between engaging with these platforms and living our lives offline.
Right. Taking breaks from social media, spending time in nature, connecting with friends and family face-to-face, pursuing hobbies. These are all essential for maintaining well-being. It's important to remember that these platforms, while powerful, are just tools. They can be used for good or ill, and it's up to us to use them responsibly.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, haven't we? From the potential for these platforms to worsen social divisions and spread misinformation, to the challenges they pose for traditional media and creative industries, and the very real concerns about their impact on mental health.
We have.
It's quite a complex picture, isn't it?
It is. These platforms are deeply embedded in our lives, and their influence extends far beyond the individual user experience. It's vital that we have open and honest conversations about how to manage these challenges.
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
like we're all in this together, navigating this new digital landscape.
Mm-hmm.
But where do we go from here? What does the future hold for these platforms, do you think?
Well, that's what we'll be discussing in the final part of our deep dive. We'll be looking at emerging trends, challenges, and opportunities in this ever-evolving digital world.
We'll be back shortly for the final part of our deep dive. Don't go anywhere. Hello again, and welcome back to Study Hall. We spent the last two parts of this deep dive really getting into Facebook and TikTok's terms of service.
Yeah,
And it's been quite an eye-opener, hasn't it?
it has. We've gone from unpacking the basics of what these platforms offer to exploring their impact on everything from, well, social cohesion to the economy.
Yeah.
I think it's become clear that these aren't just apps, They're powerful forces shaping the world around us.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on what you see coming next.
Okay.
What kind of trends and challenges are on the horizon for these platforms?
Well, a conversation about data privacy and online safety, that's not going away anytime soon. I think we're seeing more and more scrutiny from governments and regulators, definitely,
Right.
with calls for greater transparency and accountability from these tech giants.
Yeah, the EU's GDPR has already set a precedent.
It has.
And there's a lot of talk about similar legislation in other countries.
Yeah.
Do you think these regulations will actually lead to meaningful change?
It's a step in the right direction, certainly, but I don't think regulation alone is enough.
Right.
We need to see a fundamental shift in the business models of these platforms as well, away from data exploitation and towards more ethical and sustainable practices.
That's a tall order.
It is.
I mean, it's going to require a lot of pressure from users, investors, even employees within these companies to push for real change. But it does feel like people are starting to demand better, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so.
More control over their data, more transparency about how these algorithms work, more accountability for the spread of misinformation.
Absolutely. There's a growing awareness of the power these platforms wield and a desire for a more balanced relationship, really, between users and technology.
Now, on a slightly more optimistic note, there are some interesting innovations happening in the tech world, aren't there?
Yeah.
That could offer alternatives to these centralized platforms.
Definitely. There's a lot of buzz around decentralized social networks. These give users more control over their data and prioritize privacy and security. It's like the difference between having, one massive central pub everyone's forced to go to versus having a network of smaller independent pubs where people can choose where they feel most comfortable.
Yeah.
And have more say in how things are run.
I like that analogy. And we're also seeing the rise of immersive technologies like VR and AR, which could offer completely different ways to connect and experience the world online.
Yeah.
It's exciting to think about the possibilities. We could be on the cusp of a new era where technology is more human-centered and less driven by profit.
Yeah.
A digital landscape that's more like a vibrant village square than a giant data harvesting machine.
It would be nice, wouldn't it?
Now that's a future I'd like to see.
Me too. It's a future we're striving for.
So as we leave this study hall session, what are some key takeaways you'd like our listeners to ponder?
Okay. Well, first and foremost, I'd say be curious, be informed, and be proactive. Don't just passively accept the terms and conditions you're presented with. Take the time to understand how these platforms operate, how they use your data, and how that impacts your privacy and your overall online experience.
It's about being a savvy digital citizen, not just a consumer, right?
Exactly. And secondly, I'd encourage listeners to think about the kind of digital future they want to be a part of. Do we want a world dominated by a handful of powerful tech companies? Or do we want a more diverse and decentralized ecosystem where users have more control?
It's a big question. But it's one we all need to grapple with because the future of technology isn't preordained, is it? It's something we create collectively through our choices and actions.
That's a crucial point. We're not just passive bystanders in this digital revolution. We have the power to shape it.
And on that empowering note, I think it's time to bring this deep dive to a close. It's been fascinating exploring this complex world of Facebook and TikTok, hasn't it?
It really has. And I just want to thank you for guiding us through this intricate landscape with such insightful questions and observations.
Oh, the pleasure was all mine. And of course, a huge thank you to all our listeners for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes.
Remember, knowledge is power, and staying informed is the first step towards building a better digital world.
Indeed. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and stay vigilant.
That's all from us here at Steady Hall.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.